Thank you very much. I come to the floor today for the second time this week to highlight the tragic human cost of gun violence. I'll speak today about just one victim, but of course we're thinking as well about the 58 victims in Las Vegas. I'm not counting the killer in that total. Last count was 58 victims, and the well over 500 injured. We have some sense of the gravity of the violence that played out in Las Vegas. I'm not sure that any of us can fully understand it, and some of us will never quite understand what happened there. But I think we have to dedicate ourselves to taking action, and I'll get to that in a moment. But today I'm here to honor the memory of Gerard Grandzol, a resident of Philadelphia who lost his life to gun violence last month as he protected his 2-year-old daughter from carjackers. This was truly a senseless tragedy, one that took a father from his wife and 2 young daughters, one that robbed the Spring Garden neighborhood in Philadelphia of a man who is a beloved member of the community, and that's, I think, an understatement. Gerard, who is known as Gerry, his wife Kristen, and their 2-year-old daughter had welcomed a second baby girl into their family this past July. In addition to raising his family and working at a legal recruiting firm, Gerry dedicated his time and energy to making his community a better place. As a member of the Spring Garden Civic Association, he was the, quote, go-to guy, unquote, of his community, in the words of Philadelphia City Council President Darrell Clark. Gerry was an avid hockey player, the neighborhood handyman, the person who would man the grill at block parties and repair bikes for kids in the neighborhood. His neighbors and friends have spoken of his happy, magnetic personality and his willingness to help others. You can tell how important Gerry was to his family, friends, and community. You can tell what an impact he had on the people he met because thousands of people lined up at the Cathedral Basilica of Saints Peter and Paul a few weeks ago to pay their respects to Gerry and to celebrate his life. And the people who knew him are keeping his memory alive on a Facebook page where they've shared pictures and stories of Gerry, hiking, painting, playing hockey, full of life and surrounded by friends and family. This is the man who became yet another victim of gun violence last month after he refused to give a pair of robbers his car keys because his 2-year-old daughter was in the back seat. This was a truly senseless act of violence that has shaken his family, his friends, and his community. 2 suspects in this terrible crime are now in custody, and I hope that proceedings in the justice system in Philadelphia can provide some measure of relief, some measure of comfort, and we pray even closure to the Grandzol family. But whatever relief it might provide, justice can't heal every wound. It can't bring Gerry back to Kristen, their daughters, and their family, friends, and neighbors. But we can make sure that his memory lives on in the way that we treat each other, and I hope we can honor Gerry's life by dedicating ourselves to improving the lives of our neighbors and working together to solve problems. One thing I hope we can do here on the specific issue of gun violence is to work on legislation and policy that will at least reduce the likelihood that someone like Gerry will lose his life. It's part of a longer conversation. I won't get into the list of issues we should be working on. Some of those I've outlined already. But we can't simply, as we often do, express condolence and pay tribute that's appropriate to those whose lives have been lost and those who may have been injured in Las Vegas and so many other places around the country. We've got to do more than that. We can't stop with those expressions, those appropriate and essential expressions of sympathy and solidarity and commendation for the great work of law enforcement and emergency personnel. We've got to do more than that. But today, as we remember Gerry, we offer not only condolences, but we offer prayers to his wife, Kristen, to their daughters, and to the family and friends of the Spring Garden neighborhood in Philadelphia. But once again, stopping there is not enough. And there are plenty of examples of people that lose their lives in a city like Philadelphia or cities around the country that may not add up to 58 deaths, may not add up to 500 plus injured, but when you take just one life, in this case, the life that we highlight today, Gerry's life, it's reason enough to come together to work on new approaches, common sense approaches to, as I said before, reduce the likelihood. No one is suggesting that we can pass something that will be a magic wand to take away all of these acts of violence. But we shouldn't throw up our hands and say there is absolutely nothing we can do to reduce the likelihood that people will lose their lives in an act due to an act of gun violence. I refuse to accept that as an American, that there's nothing we can do legislatively to reduce that likelihood, or even, God willing, to substantially reduce the likelihood. So when we're thinking about Gerry today, I hope we can commit ourselves to action and debate and maybe even consensus on legislation and policy to move forward in the right direction. Madam President, I would yield the floor